welcome to the latest episode of the Leadership Untitled podcast with me, Rob Moores, the show that helps leaders, whether you're new leaders or senior leaders or anywhere in the middle, with a bunch of hints and tips and a fair few mistakes that myself and my guests have made along the way. My guest this week is Stephen M.R. Covey, #1 bestseller of The Speed of Trust and also most recently Trust and Inspire. So if you're looking to have a conversation around why trust actually matters in an organisation, and then maybe moving on to how we as leaders can actually start to trust and inspire our people more and what that leads to, then this is the episode for you. I cannot wait for this conversation with Stephen. He's someone I've followed for a long time and I absolutely love listening to his audiobooks. So please join me in welcoming Stephen to the podcast. Hi Stephen, welcome to the Leadership Untitled podcast. How are you today?
Hi, I'm doing great, Rob. Excited to be here on your Leadership Untitled podcast. Looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Oh, me too. We've just been joking beforehand that obviously the point of this show is that towards the end we'll decide on the title of the episode based on what we talk about. I think there's a good chance the word trust may pop up in that title, and if it doesn't, something's gone very, very wrong.
Yeah, I hope that it's natural that trust is going to appear in there, and I bet it does. But let's see. Let's let it flow.
Yeah, let's steer clear of British politics and then stick with trust. Although that might come up as a damn good example of where not to go. But anyway, that aside. Thank you for sending over a copy of your book to me there. You've got the new book out at the moment called Trust and Inspire. And obviously the one before that, you've got The Speed of Trust, which really sings to what I genuinely believe, and obviously you do, is that trust is one of, if not the most important thing that tends to be missing in business. And this sings to something I talk about when I talk about emotional intelligence, that it's something that we can relate to more at home, but there seems to be something about work that we either don't want to talk about these things, or we kind of block them out, or other priorities come along. So how did you come around really focusing on trust as a big leadership topic to talk about?
Yeah, I began to see it everywhere, or maybe in some cases, to see the absence of trust and the cost and the consequence of that. And it's like, I think it was Warren Buffett who said that trust is kind of like the air that we breathe. And when it's present, you don't notice as much, but when it's absent, everybody notices. And we're living in a world increasingly that's becoming less and less trusting, and there's an absence of trust increasingly, and we're becoming more aware of it. And so I began to see why trust mattered, not in just kind of soft and subtle ways of social virtues, because it clearly is a social virtue, but I began to see how trust also had an impact on economic performance, on the speed at which you can move, on the cost of everything, as well as every aspect of leadership, from collaboration to innovation to engagement, retention, all the things that are important to people, how trust really impacted everything. And yet it was still not talked about enough. It wasn't focused on enough of in a practical way of how you could move the needle on trust, how you could build it on purpose. Instead, it was kind of presented as it's either there or it's not, and there's not much you can do about it. And I began to realize that, no, trust is learnable. It's a learnable skill or competency that we can build and grow and establish and expand, and in some cases, even restore. And so it was kind of a process of going through this that I began to feel like this is a big idea, trust, that's being underestimated. I mean, at one level, everyone knows it's important, but we're still underestimating it, maybe by a factor of 10 or even 100, and that it's learnable. Yeah. It's something you can get good at and build on purpose if you're intentional about it. And I began to think I could make a contribution in this field. So that was the idea of why I got excited about trust. And part of it, Rob, came from my own experience of when we merged our company, the Covey Leadership Center, with another company, Franklin Quest, who had been our arch competitor. Yeah. And suddenly these arch competitors combined, we didn't trust each other.
Yeah.
And I saw firsthand the high cost of low trust. And we began to focus on it, and we changed. We went from low trust to high trust. And I saw the high return to high trust. And the contrast was so striking that I became convinced, I want to talk about this. I have something to say, and I think it matters.
Yeah, I know you mentioned some of those stories in the book as well. And I think,
Yes.
it's that foundation piece that we often miss. We're always looking at the symptoms of the problems or the challenges that are coming out. And you can sit and think there for a second. If trust was rampant throughout the organization, if we all trusted and were trusted, how many of those symptoms of those challenges or problems might just disappear overnight? And I think you're right. One of those great, very common activities that people do is getting a piece of paper with trust on it and crumpling it up and then trying to iron it back out and see if it's nice and flat. And no, it isn't. So the lesson is, let's not break trust. But there's a big piece there that's missing, and that is that building trust that you talked about. How can we rebuild it and build it? And I kind of talked to that with, it's like a ream of paper. You can't quite squish that the same as a single piece of paper. So talk about that rebuilding, especially in those times when maybe it's been broken.
Yeah. It's kind of like, there's a trust bank or a trust account, a balance of trust in a relationship or on a team, in a culture. And just like with a financial bank account, if you make a deposit, the balance goes up. You take a withdrawal, the balance goes down. You take too many withdrawals or too big a withdrawal, and you're overdrawn.
Yeah.
And there's insufficient funds in a bank or insufficient trust in a relationship, on a team, in a culture. And so in a sense, it's that simple, that you build trust by making deposits into the trust relationships. And that's behaviors, how you behave, how you act, how you work with people, and you avoid the withdrawals, the violations that diminish, dilute the trust. And so when you've lost trust and you're overdrawn in the trust account, if you will, then you can't talk your way out of a problem that you behave your way into. So if we've lost people's trust through our behavior, the only way to get it back is through our behavior. Words alone are necessary, but they're insufficient. We have to behave our way back into trust, just like we behaved our way out of it. So we've got to do that and own it. You take responsibility. It's very hard to restore trust with other people if you're not taking responsibility and owning it.
Yeah.
It kind of look, if you're just finger pointing and blaming, saying, it's their fault, his fault, her fault, it's hard to restore it. But if you take responsibility, own it, you can build it. And then you say, so here's what we're going to do. And then you do what you say you're going to do. And you demonstrate it through your behavior, through your actions. I saw this happen when the pandemic first hit a couple of years ago, and we saw, Zoom, which is the platform we're using right now. They went from, I think, 10 million users to 200 million users in a month.
Yeah.
And, just extraordinary explosive growth. And they had a few glitches up front with, such a 20-fold increase in a month.
Yeah, big stuff.
On some security things. And what was amazing to me was how Eric Yuan, the founder of Zoom, how he did not finger point, blame. He took direct responsibility, saying, look, we made a mistake here in a couple of areas. We own this. We want to restore your trust. He used those very words. Customer, want to restore your trust. And again, this was not a massive thing. This was in a few minutes, in a few situations where there were some security issues. And then he told them what they were going to do. And then he did precisely that. He did what he said he was going to do. The company did. And they reestablished, restored that trust. And they did it fast because they didn't just talk their way out of it. They behaved their way out of it.
Yeah.
And they actually built, in many cases, even higher trust than they had before going in. So it's possible to reestablish trust, but it won't happen through words. It'll happen through actions. Through behaviors. And Eric Yuan, there's many examples of this. In a service situation, you could lose a customer if you lost their trust, but how you respond to that, there's service recovery. You could actually regain the trust at a higher level than it was going in. If you own it, take responsibility for it, make restitution. And then that means to make whole, a legal concept, and then tell them what you're going to do to regain it, and then do what you say you're going to do, and reestablish it. And that's exciting. Then that's important in a low trust world, because if you couldn't restore trust, in a sense, Rob, we'd all be circling the drain because none of us are perfect, and we all make mistakes. And the fact that you can rebuild, regain, reestablish trust through your behavior is hopeful for each of us as leaders.
Oh, absolutely. Could not agree more. And the bank account, I think it's really interesting to think of it in those terms, because thinking of, for example, at customer service level, sometimes customers might, for whatever reason, legitimately just want to leave that provider for whatever it might be. And being able in that instance to, like you say, through your actions, just let that happen and treat that customer just as well as a new customer coming on board. That might just be the difference of them saying, well, I'm going to come back to you in 6 months' time when something or a provider they go to maybe doesn't have that level of trust and communication with them. So I think it's really interesting to think, where are you coming from? Where are you starting from at that point? And what's this going to deplete, or what's it going to add to that bank account? I think it's an interesting topic.
It is interesting. And it's kind of a paradigm shift for many. There's some that operate on the premise that, if you've lost trust, you can never restore it. Or if you do, it's like putting together a mirror that it will never be the same. Well, look, I have empathy and some understanding for that sentiment. And there might be some situations, some context where that actually might be the case. I acknowledge that in a massive betrayal, for example, in a personal relationship, that's going to be hard to restore. And you have to look at the nature of the loss of trust. Is it on the character side? Is it on the competence side? It's easier to restore trust on the competence side than it is the character side. What's the nature of the relationship? Is this just transactional where people have moved on? Or is it an ongoing relationship where maybe rebuilding it, restoring it is worth it for both parties? And then what's the willingness of both parties to work on this? One party to behave their way back into trust, the other party allowing that to happen. And that you may not have a chance in all those situations. So I will acknowledge there might be some situations where you can't restore the trust, but I think that's the minority. I think in the majority of situations, you probably have an opportunity to reestablish, to regain, to restore trust. And I think if you do this sincerely, intentionally, with behavior, that in most situations you can restore it, and in some cases even grow it. And that's a paradigm shift that's hopeful. But again, I come back to it has to be through behavior. So in my earlier work, The Speed of Trust, I highlight 13 behaviors common to high trust people, and restoring that. I'll just give a few of those. If you confront reality that you've lost trust, versus being in denial. If you practice accountability, meaning you own it, not finger point and blame, then if you right wrongs, now you make it right when you've been wrong, and you might apologize, make restitution, do your best to kind of make it right. Then if you clarify expectations going forward, what you're going to do to regain, reestablish the trust, the behavior back into it, then if you keep commitments and do what you say you're going to do, you can behavior back into trust. And so I just gave you 5 of the 13 behaviors of how you can restore trust on purpose. But your motive, your intent matters. If it's, are you really trying to do this for the right reasons? That will make a big difference in your ability to do so. Yeah.
And people can tell. I mean, it may not be apparent immediately, but quite often, people can tell. And I know Celeste Headley, when she did a famous TED talk about conversation, saying that there's no need to show people you're paying attention. If you are, in fact, paying attention, they can tell. Yeah. And in the same way, if you've got a genuine intent and a positive intent behind rebuilding that, I think what's really interesting me, and what I love about your latest book as well, is it isn't all the sweetness and light of what trust is. It really does start to confront the barriers that people will put in play for that. Now, I know I once did a work with a set of senior leaders, and one of those senior leaders had been on multiple boards in that industry for quite a relatively long career already. And they said to me, right, Rob, I get it. I get that trust is important. And the reason we were on that conversation was because trust was one of their values for the company they had started to grow. Get it, understand it, all that stuff. However, I've been on the board of a number of really successful companies, and there was little or no trust at all in that boardroom.
Yeah.
Why should I care about it going forward? I won't tell you what I said. I would love to know what your advice in that situation would be. What would you say?
I would say this, that ignore it at your own peril, that trust is the currency of organizations today that are going to succeed in this new world of work. You know, it's a new world with remote work, hybrid work, intentionally flexible work, with the new generation of workers, and the old model, command and control, doesn't work in this new world, this new organization, new world that we're operating in, that where you've got people from as many as 5 generations, these younger generations, Gen Z and millennials, they don't want to be managed. They want to be led. They want to be trusted. They want to be inspired. And you're not proximate with them always, perhaps in places. And there's so much choice that we didn't have before, that if you try to command and control your way in this new world of work, it's going to become increasingly irrelevant, and you're going to become irrelevant, and you'll lose your people. You won't retain them. You won't inspire them. You won't bring out the best in them, and you'll become less and less relevant. And so ignore it at your peril. And because the world has changed, our style of leadership needs to catch up to this changing world. And so I call the new way to lead in this new world, trust and inspire instead of command and control. And it's really what is going to draw people to you. It's going to help us win in the workplace first, so we can win in the marketplace second. And that's why I love your podcast around leadership and focusing on the HR professionals and L&D, is because it's all about winning in the workplace, building a high trust team, the high trust culture, so that you can attract, retain, engage, and inspire the best people and bring out the best in people, so that we can then collaborate and innovate and stay relevant in a changing world, win in the marketplace. Yeah. But the sequence matters. The win in the workplace precedes winning in the marketplace in the long run. And you can't do that without trust. You can't command and control your way to collaboration and innovation. You've got to do that through trust and inspire. You can't command and control your way to a great culture. Again, you do that through trust and inspire. And so relevance is why I would say this is so important today. And the other model is going to become increasingly irrelevant and ultimately will die out over time.
Absolutely. The key word there you've used a couple of times as well is culture. This is a cultural thing, and it will spread if done well as well. My answer was very, very, very similar. It's that hard measures, and I know in the first book you talk a lot about that this directly translating to cost and the speed of business, and I think it's just taking a sidestep and allowing leaders and managers and CEOs to just think about that for a moment. Thinking about what the lack of trust or the loss of trust somewhere, what has that caused over the course of the last year in terms of meetings that weren't needed, time spent that wasn't required, increased costs of running those operational elements, of infighting, of siloed working, of whatever it might be, that if trust was present, how much of that would have been eliminated?
That's beautiful. Exactly. That there's economics to trust. And it affects speed and cost. And when trust goes down in relationships, on teams, between teams, in cultures, like you said, when trust goes down in the culture, in the organization, with customers, with partners in the marketplace, anywhere, you'll find that the speed goes down with it. Everything will take you longer to do, and the cost will go up. Everything will cost you more to do, not by a little, but by a lot. Our distrust is very expensive, and it slows things down. And you also don't get the kind of collaboration and innovation and creativity in a low trust team and low trust culture. So there's hard and soft measures you can look at. And I put a big emphasis on saying there's economics of trust on the hard side. It is a tax. Low trust is a tax. And it literally taxes the organization that you could quantify. You see it in redundancy, bureaucracy, the disengagement of people, the turnover, the churn, fraud, all kinds of, high cost to low trust that you can measure and put a value on. But then it works the other side. There's an extraordinary return to high trust because of how you can attract and retain and engage and inspire the best people, how you can collaborate, how you can innovate. There 11 times higher innovation in high trust teams and cultures, according to LRN in a study. And people are far more drawn to want to be with a high trust team and culture, and they'll stay with you. Whereas in a low trust one, they'll go find a place where they're trusted, and they'll leave. And we could go on and on with kind of economic measures that quantify the value of trust. And that really was my whole focus with my first book, The Speed of Trust, was how there are economics of trust, and high trust is a performance multiplier, low trust is a destructive tax, a diminisher that will get you at every gate. And so, and then my follow-on book, this new one, Trust and Inspire, is all about saying this now is the new world we're operating in, and the old model, command and control, doesn't work in a new world of work. And Trust and Inspire does. And so it's a better way to lead so that we can be relevant and perform better, but also do it in a way that increases the well-being of our people, of our culture, so we can continue to do it going forward and bring purpose and meaning and contribution to what we're doing, and add value in this new world, and be, this is the currency of our time. Trust is what makes our world work today, especially. And so we got to get good at this, and
really good at it.
I love what you're highlighting, Rob, that this is not just kind of a warm and fuzzy, soft and cuddly, touchy-feely idea. It is hard-edged. Trust is economic. You can put a value on it. It is a performance multiplier that is extraordinary. Greater speed, lower cost, greater collaboration, innovation, engagement, inspiration, meaning, purpose, well-being. Everything that's good that we're trying to do, we do better when we start with trust.
100%. And I love, that word fluffy is used by so many senior leaders about departments like the world of HR, L&D, learning, coaching, trust, all these things. We don't have time for that fluffy stuff, or that's going to get in the way of the end number. It's a fantastic read, the first book, especially around that piece, around really start to think about how this does directly and indirectly hit those bottom line numbers. And what I also love about both books is the way that you always invite the reader. I almost said listen to them, because I prefer Audible. I almost feel like I'm listening to you on an Audible book again. But you invite them to kind of reflect in the moment. So, give yourself some scores, or give your leader a score, or just sort of reflect in the moment. I think in the new book, you've even got a few areas where you can write down your answers, just a few lines in there. Can you just pause and just write down those things for a second that we quite often don't do. We don't do that. And that's one of the things, I guess, is time. What are the barriers? If you look at this and the things that you get told time and time again, we're buying into it. We love the idea. However, what are those barriers that keep coming and slapping you in the face, Stephen?
Yeah. Well, here's some of them. Because you're exactly right, Rob. At one level, people say, "Okay, I get it, I believe it." But, and then they go through a series of barriers. Here's one of them, maybe the most common one. This is a good idea, but this won't work here. Not with our company, not in our industry. we're a very regulated, compliance-based industry. So the idea of trust and inspire, we're very command and control in our industry, and the regulations, the compliance put on us. This won't work here, or this won't work in our company, or this won't work in my situation or with my boss.
Yeah.
Because he's very command and control or this or that. And so it's very easy to kind of say that the problem is out there, is everybody else, and therefore this won't work here. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
And another one is maybe some hope to it, but it's kind of a fear-based barrier of, but what if I try this and I lose control? Sometimes there's a fear of, if I trust, I lose control. And I try to reverse that and show that there's actually more control in a high trust culture than there is in a rules-based culture. Because you can't come up with enough rules for people who you can't trust. But what if I try this and it doesn't work? And so, try to show you how you can extend what I call a smart trust, not a blind trust, but with expectations, with accountability to increase the probability of it working. Or what if I try trusting and I've been burned before? So I've had bad experience of trying this, and it's hard now to trust again when I've been burned. That can be a barrier. Or what if I don't, get the credit in doing this? What if I'm a little bit kind of scarcity minded and trusting feels like that's a little threatening to me? Or what if I'm just not as confident as you think I am? And this whole thing is a little bit, it's easier to kind of be in control of, this and that. And these are a lot of the fear-based barriers. But maybe another common one is, I just don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
I've been very trained in the old model. It's easier to kind of dictate and command and control. That seems easier. And I don't know how to lead with trust and inspire. And perhaps the most difficult of all is if someone kind of just feels like, well, kind of, this is who I am. This is what I know. This is what I've been raised with. It's what's brought me to where we're at. And I just like to say to that, I'll quote Marshall Goldsmith, the executive coach, that what got you here won't take you there. That while you might have been good at command and control, that's not going to be where we're going to need to go in the future, where leadership is going, and it's going towards inspiration. Trust and inspire is a way better way to lead in this new world. And so we are not our style. We can change our style. We can re-script and become the kind of leader we'd like to be. And that's why, to your point, Rob, I do like in this Trust and Inspire book to give a lot of invitations and self-reflections for people to say, kind of, where am I? And it's okay where you are. Let's make sure our style is not getting in the way of our intent. Because I think most people's intent is to bring out the best in their people and is to trust them and want to inspire them. I don't think we have an intent of saying, I want to control them. But rather, we want good things to happen, but we just want to make sure we don't lose control and make sure that we get the result. And so I'm trying to give people a style of leadership that can work in this new world of work and still have appropriate control built in. And I call this trust and inspire. So that's the idea. And those are some of the barriers. And I think maybe one last point, Rob, that I think that the opposite of command and control is not trust and inspire. I'd say this: the opposite of command and control is abdicate and abandon. See, that's kind of just stepping back and not leading at all. So if command and control is too much hands-on, excessively hands-on, well, abdicate and abandon is completely hands-off, where there's no leadership going on. And I'm advocating, I'm not leading at all. Trust and inspire, in a sense, is a third alternative that is trying to say, no, it's not abdicating. It's just that we're doing this in a different way. And I make the point that you can be authoritative without being authoritarian. That's what a trust and inspire leader is. You can be decisive without being, autocratic. You can be strong without being forceful. You can be compelling without being compulsory. You can be visionary without being exclusionary. exclusive, and you can be demanding without being overbearing. The point is you can have control and be in control without being controlling. And that's the idea of trust and inspire. It's a better way to lead in a new world of work. And I look at someone like Satya Nadella and how he's really turned around Microsoft through his leadership style of trust and inspire, of a growth mindset, and really starting with the premise of you model, you then trust people, and you also connect to purpose and meaning and contribution so that you inspire people. Yeah. And through caring, and it's amazing what that kind of leadership does, how it unleashes the capabilities, the talents of people. That's what we need today. And we can overcome the barriers that get in the way if we're intentional and deliberate about us. And so I try to give people the tools in this Trust and Inspire book to help them know how to become this kind of leader and how to overcome those common barriers that get in the way of doing it.
Brilliant stuff. Brilliant stuff. What I like about this as well is that you mentioned intent there, that it isn't the intent to want to control people. And I think, the two words you used before, you used a lot in the first book as well, again, especially the cost and speed. Quite often the intent is there around the cost and the speed, and that's what leads to someone to control it. I'll just do it myself, or I'll tell you how to do it rather than develop and teach you how to do it, or whatever it might be. So often I have clients who say the little siren goes on their head to go in an emergency mode and solve it for their people. And I think there's an irony in there that I think the more control you try to have, the more things you then need to control, and they're not the things that are there. So I say things like, if we try and manage performance, which is one thing, and I think in the book you've talked about managing things rather than people. So you're managing performance, absolutely, but then we always talk about things like we end up managing the values and behaviors of people, or we end up managing the one-to-ones and development of people. And the second that people start coming into the equation here, it's not about managing. And if we try and manage all those things, like, well, you've had that training, so now you can do it, go, speed, cost. It doesn't really turn out like that. So tell me more about that kind of, we manage things, not people.
Yeah. I love this, Rob. You're exactly right. That see, the command and control, the premise is that is a management mindset and paradigm. And that works for things, and it works for processes, and it works for systems and structures. See, I'm not one of those people that is trying to bash management. We need good management. We need great management. And we also need great leadership. Yeah. You manage things, you lead people. The moment you start to manage people as if they were things, that's when you'll end up ultimately with no people and a lot of things, because people don't want to be part of that culture. They don't want to be managed. They want to be led.
Well, they start to feel like things, won't we?
Yeah. If you feel like a thing, you're fungible, a commodity, people don't respond to that, especially in our new world where they have so many choices and options, and doesn't bring out the best in them. And I don't think that's usually our intent. Our intent is, we want to make sure we perform. But I love how you say it. It's ironic that the more controlling we try to be, we end up having to control more and more. And you can't do it, especially with people who have autonomy, who have agency, have choice and possibilities, creativity. And so, yes, manage things, systems, processes, structures, inventories, performance. Like you said, you manage the numbers, you manage the business, but you lead people. Yeah. And so it's not either or, it's and. And real leadership is always this. The real leadership is getting results in a way that grows people. See, so that, yes, we got to get results. And if we're not getting results, we're not leading. But it's possible to get results and not grow people, to get results and not build a high trust culture. And then the quality of those results is not as great. And your ability to get results in the future is not as strong. But if you get results in a way that grows people, get results in a way that inspires trust and builds a high trust culture, your ability to get results in the future has just gone up. It's a far greater outcome. And so I'm saying that getting results is an end, but so is growing people. That is an end as well, not just a means to an end. And in command and control, people are just a means to an end.
Yeah.
And so you get results through people. At one level, that's okay, but you push that to the extreme, you'll just milk it as far as you can go and try to get as much efficiency you can, and you treat people like things. But if you get results in a way that grows people, then people are also an end. Yeah. And that is a trust and inspire approach that still is saying we got to get the outcome. It's just how you go about doing it is different in kind. Yeah. And it's a far better approach in our world today. Yeah. And so it's both. It's an and approach. As Jim Collins says, the genius of the and.
Yeah, I love that. And it's something actually, a coach of mine once encouraged me more to think in that way. It's not always this or that. What if you put and in the middle? What might that open up? And, you know, I think we're that polarized on certain things at the minute in the world that we often forget that piece of. And even in some of the light stuff like leadership development, we quite often focus on the difference between management and leadership based on the fact we need to move from that to this and then forget management. So it's really refreshing to talk about the fact that no, management has its place and management of things is highly desirable. Absolutely.
Absolutely. We got to be really good at management. Of things, systems, processes, structures, numbers, the business, performance, and really good at leadership of people.
Yeah.
And so I think the better contrast is not management leadership, because we need both, but it's rather command and control or trust and inspire.
Yeah.
You know, command and control, you manage people, and things similarly, trust and inspire, manage things, lead people. Command and control is kind of about motivation, you know, carrot and stick. Trying to provide, does that work? Sure. As you know, as Daniel Pink says, it motivates people to get more rewards,
yeah.
and they'll want to do that. But it's all external. It's extrinsic. It's outside of us. Trust and inspire is intrinsic. It's internal. It's about inspiration, not just motivation. So it's inside of people, and our job is to light the fire within. It's already there. To inspire comes from the Latin term inspirare, which means to breathe life into.
Wow.
So as leaders, we're trying to breathe life into relationships, teams, cultures, and ignite the fire that's already there that can burn on without, you know, having you to provide more incentives, more rewards, but rather you ignite what's inside of people instinctively, intuitively, and naturally. Let that burn on. And the desire to tap into purpose, to meaning, to contribution, such a better way to lead in our world today. And that's trust and inspire, inspiration versus the command and control motivation. And so I think that's a better distinction. Not management,
Definitely.
Leadership, management, bad leadership, good. No, management is good and leadership is good, but rather command and control or trust and inspire. That's a better distinction. And trust and inspire is a far better way, a far better style of leadership for our world today, for people. And I think of all the barriers, perhaps the biggest barrier, Rob, to becoming a trust and inspire leader is that we think we already are one. And we say, well, you know, I'm not a command and control leader, and therefore I must be trust and inspire. And we're not focused enough on kind of the paradigm, the mindset of what makes a trust and inspire leader, how they see the greatness inside of everyone, not just the high potentials, but they view everyone through a lens of there's greatness inside of everyone. So my job as a leader is to unleash their potential, not to contain or control them. And people are whole people, you know, body, heart, mind, spirit, not just economic beings, but a whole person. So my job as a leader is to inspire, not merely motivate. And these ideas, that's a paradigm. It starts with the mindset. I know you focus heavily on that. Mindset, the paradigm, out of which comes the behavior. And when you view people as whole people with greatness inside of people, then it becomes natural that your style of leadership is not to control or contain, but rather to release, to unleash their capabilities, their greatness, to develop it, to see their potential, to communicate it, develop it, unleash it. So it starts with the mindset and then moves into the kind of the actions, I call these the stewardships of how first you model. So you model the behavior that you want to see. and especially humility and courage,
Yeah.
and authenticity and vulnerability and empathy and performance. But then you trust people, you become more trusting, not just being trustworthy, that's necessary, but insufficient, but becoming more trusting. And then you also inspire. The idea there is that inspiring others is a learnable skill. It's not just for the charismatic. Everyone can learn to inspire through caring and belonging, and through connecting with people through caring and belonging, and connecting to purpose, to meaning and contribution. All these are learnable things for leaders. And that's the whole idea, is we can become trust and inspire. I think we want to be, we maybe just don't know how. So I'm trying to give people the mindset and the skill set and the tool set of becoming a trust and inspire leader. So we're relevant in our new world of work and get the results in a way that grows the people.
I think often people don't know how far they can take it. So those managers who you think, I'd say, that might think they are a trusting and inspiring leader, they might just be more trusting and inspiring the leader next to them. That doesn't mean they've gone all the way with that.
Yes.
I talk about, I think it's a really interesting kind of topic to the conversation, because I look at things like accountability and responsibility. And then if you kind of lay that over the trusted will skill matrix that we've talked about for decades and decades, we so often focus on pushing accountability and pushing the skill onto people to do what we need them to do in the way that we want them to do it. Whereas if you rephrase that question and using one of the words that you've used there, inspire, instead of pushing accountability and pushing skill, I'm getting my words mixed up, pushing skill, how do we inspire responsibility and will within people? And trust is absolutely, I hear managers will say to me in their coaching, well, I lead one site and I've led that site for a number of years now. It's brilliant, awesome. The site I've got the trouble with, I've just been given this new site and it's just not as good as that one. And you kind of think, well, what's made the good one good? What are the ingredients? And trust is bound to be part of that.
It is bound to be part of. You're exactly right. I love what you're just describing, Rob. And in fact, I'll put it this way: not only is trust bound to be part of it, to be trusted is the most inspiring form of human motivation. It brings out the very best in all of us. When we're trusted, we want to rise to the occasion. We want to prove the trust justified. Want to give it back, want to perform better. And it brings out the best in us. Now, look, I'm not naive. I'm Pollyannish. I recognize there might be a few people that abuse the trust being given, but the vast majority will be inspired by it, and they'll rise to the occasion. Don't let the few that you can't trust tell you about the many who you can. It's far better to build our team and our culture around the 95% that can be trusted, rather than the 5% or so that can't, and let that culture crowd out, weed out, starve out the offenders, the violators, versus going to the lowest common denominator of saying, well, because I can't trust a few, I don't trust anyone. But the trust will not only get better performance, you'll inspire your people, and it'll bring out the best in them. They'll rise to the occasion, and they'll reciprocate and give it back to you. It becomes a virtuous upward spiral, and you'll see possibilities you didn't even know were out there. But when you start to dictate methods instead of extend trust, then you become responsible for the results, not them. And people don't feel that sense of inspiration and that belief, that they don't feel the belief from you. So here's an exercise I have for all of us as listeners and viewers, is think about in your life. And I ask this of you, Rob, but also of our listeners and viewers. Has there been a person in your life, in your work, in your personal life, in your professional life, a person who believed in you, who maybe saw something in you, something that you didn't even see in yourself at the time, who took a chance on you, who gave you an opportunity, who trusted you, who inspired you, someone who believed in you, a trust and inspire figure in your life? I know for me, my father was one. My first boss, John Walsh, was one who he saw more potential in me than I saw in myself, and helped me come to see it in myself. And I was so inspired by him and his belief in me that I wanted to prove I wanted to give it back to him, to rise to the occasion and thank him by how I performed, by him kind of stepping out and taking a chance on me. And I'll bet for most of us have probably had a person like this, a leader, a coach, a friend, a mentor, a family member, a clergy, anyone, someone who believed in you, trusted you. So I guess I would ask, as you think about that person, and again, there might be a few in your life, what did that do to you? That type of belief in you, that type of trust and inspiration, did that inspire you? Mm-hmm. How did you respond to it? Did you need to be managed? Or were you, on fire? And, did you rise to the occasion? And what did it do to you? And think back on that person. And in fact, I would invite you, after you listen or view this, call them up, text them, write them, thank them for being that kind of person in your life. But my guess is we tapped into inspiration here. They tapped into inspiration with you. Mm-hmm. And then I just would ask us to pay it forward and ask the question, what if you were to become that kind of person for another in your life? What might that do for them, just like this person did for you? That's what I mean by trust and inspire. We need this kind of leadership today. We've all probably had someone like that. Most of us, I think almost all of us, have had such a person. Yeah. What if we could become that person for another? And if you can do it with one, you could do it with another, and then another and another. This could become a style of how you lead. And so I think the self-reflection is important. And maybe the best place to start is, who was that kind of trust and inspire person for each of us as a leader today?
And I think, really, really importantly there, the words you're using, it's not just about what made them a great leader for you. It's about how they made you feel. How did you feel? And therefore, how would you like people in your charge to feel, people in your company to feel, the people you're responsible for to feel? And I also like the way that you weave in and out of business into personal relationships as well. Exactly the same way. How do you want your children to feel? There's always, you think about either good parents, good bosses, bad bosses, what you've learned from both. How, rather than kind of trying to learn the traits of those things, think about how did they make me feel, and how can I go about, how can I then learn to do the things, if I need to, that will make people feel like that too.
I love it. I agree completely. I love the words of the poet, Maya Angelou, that as you look back on your life, you won't remember what people said or did near as much as you will remember how they made you feel.
Yeah.
And if you as a leader can say and do things that show the trust and inspire such that people feel trusted, to be trusted and to feel that you're trusted, that inspires people. It brings out the very best in them. They rise to the occasion, they perform better, and they give it back to you. And the data is overwhelming. High trust teams, high trust organizations, multiple studies show there's about a 3 times greater performance than low trust teams, low trust cultures.
Yep.
So this is not just a nice thing to do. It's a better way to lead, to get better results, better outcomes, as well as impacting how people feel, their well-being, their energy, their joy, and how they pay that forward.
Yep.
And so it is the end. It's the result and the growth of the person and how they feel their well-being, the culture, the performance and the culture, so you can continue to perform. That's the power of trust. And it's the power of a trust and inspire style of leadership today. It's a better way to lead in a new world of work.
Although it's not, if you're listening to this or watching this and you are board level, senior leadership, CEOs, this isn't just about the leaders below you doing this to them, to their people. It's how are you doing that? But also that reflection that, Stephen, you've just mentioned to people to have. If you're a CEO, board level, director, whatever it might be, you've probably had those leaders in the past that you can think of that you trusted and they trusted you. Now think of it on that micro level for a second and go, what was my performance like? compared to a leader that maybe showed you zero trust and you felt untrusted in that role, in terms of your mindset, in terms of your belief or your desire to perform and give more, actually being linked to the purpose and feeling you wanted to be motivated and inspired? What was the difference there? Because, this isn't just about further down the organization. As a CEO, you can feel these things too.
Absolutely. I would say at wherever you stand, whatever your role, now, especially if you're in a CEO role or, the team leader, if you're responsible for a lot, your impact on this, your stewardship can be enormous. And rather than think of a span of control, think of a span of care and of impact and of trust and inspiration that you can have. And on so many, by modeling, by trusting, by inspiring. And you can go first. Someone needs to go first. Leaders go first.
Yeah,
so they're the first to extend that trust. They're the first to inspire others through demonstrating caring and a sense of belonging, and through connecting people to purpose, to meaning, to contribution. I was with Jim Gash, a leader at Pepperdine University. He's the president of Pepperdine University in the west coast of California, the United States. And then I spent time with him and his team, and he leads by extending trust, and it brings out the best in people. And he starts with trust until proven otherwise versus the other way around.
Yeah.
He trusts you until you prove that he shouldn't. And he just brings out the best in people. They're inspired by it. They perform better. Well, his school of business, the Graziato School of Business, they really apply these trust ideas and principles and inspiration in all that they do. And here's their purpose. As here they are, educating people as they get an MBA and other things, that our purpose is not to have leaders, to develop leaders who are best in the world, but our purpose is to develop leaders who are best for the world. Now, best for the world leaders. Now, to do that, you got to be pretty good at what you're doing. So you got to be partly best in the world. But the whole idea is you're tapping into purpose, into meaning, into contribution, creating best for the world leaders. Talk about inspire.
Yeah.
People there feel inspired. And they feel like, I want to be part of this, the faculty, the staff, but the janitors do as well. They're developing best for the world leaders. That inspires, that breathes life into people, brings out the best in them. That kind of leadership is the kind of leadership that is needed today. We need more trust in our world. We need more inspiration in our world. We need leaders that know how to model this. And I think each of us as listeners, as viewers, can be that kind of leader. So no matter where we start, leaders go first. And I'm looking at them and talking to them. And that's the starting point for all of us. So that's my invitation to you. Go first.
Love it.
Don't wait on anyone else. Leaders go first.
Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Stephen, I'm signed up. I'm going straight for it. I'm going to be putting all sorts of posts and blogs out about this now as well. Completely. If there's one piece of last advice then to give to that leader today to go first, what's the last piece of advice you would give them?
My last piece of advice would be the first to extend the trust, to be trusting. Because to have trust, yes, we have to be trustworthy, but we also have to be trusting in order to have trust. And I've seen maybe the biggest reason there's not enough trust inside of our teams, our organizations, in our cultures today is less that we're not trustworthy. That can be an issue, and some I acknowledge that, and we have to be trustworthy. That comes first. But it's more often that we're not trusting enough. It's you could have two trustworthy people working together, and yet no trust between them, even though they're both trustworthy.
Yeah.
If neither person is willing to extend trust to the other. So yes, be trustworthy, but especially focus on being trusting. So be the first to extend trust in smart ways, with expectations, with accountability. You build that in. So it's not a blind trust, it's a smart trust. But you watch what that does to people, how it makes them feel, to your point, Rob, but also how they rise to the occasion, they perform better. They're creative, they're innovative, they feel trusted, they give it, and they reciprocate the trust back to you becomes this virtuous upward spiral. So be the first to extend trust to others. Be trusting as well as being trustworthy to create the trust that's needed today.
And we'll all be inspired by it.
And we'll all be inspired from it. To
Absolutely.
be trusted is the most inspiring form of human motivation.
We've got to that part of the show then, Stephen, where we have a quick look back at what we've been talking about, and a few notes that I've made and all that sort of stuff. And it being Leadership Untitled, we are now to name the episode. So I'm going to come to you. I'm going to hold down the buttons. Here we go. What do I think you might be called?
What if something like this, of the future of leadership, from command and control to trust and inspire?
Like it. 100%.
Because that's the idea of, we are shifting. It's a new world. So the future, where we're going, we're moving the future of leadership from command and control. That's where we've been, to trust and inspire. This is where we need to be, where we need to go to be relevant in our new world, to bring out the best in our people, and to lead in the way that's going to work in our for others and for ourselves, to get the results and to grow the people. And command and control won't do it anymore. Trust and inspire can and will.
I would
That's
love
where
that.
we need to go.
All L&D and leadership development training professionals from tomorrow, stop doing this manager versus leader activity and start looking at command and control, trust and inspire. Absolutely love it, Stephen. Thank you so much. If people would like to follow you and hear more and see more of your stuff, where's the best thing they can? Where's the best place they can look and follow you?
Yes, you can go to our website, trustandinspire.com. And there's tools there and resources and ways to connect with me. You can follow me on social media, on LinkedIn at Stephen M.R. Covey, or Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at Stephen M.R. Covey, and follow me on the social media. But go to our website, trustandinspire.com, also speedoftrust.com, and we got tools and resources there. I'm proud of both books. As you mentioned earlier, Rob, the Speed of Trust came first. That kind of gives you the basics of how you build trust, the economics of trust. That's a starting point, a foundation. And then Trust and Inspire is a leadership approach. But it's also a parenting approach. It's a community approach. It's basically saying this is the kind of leadership that's needed. And I make the point that leadership is not a position. Leadership is a choice. Everyone can lead. And you lead as a parent, you lead as a friend, and Trust and Inspire is a better way to lead. It's also a better way to live. It's a happier
100%.
way. And so that's where you can go to learn more about me. And I'd love you to become interested in this. And I invite you to join me and you, Rob, because I think what you're doing is Trust and Inspire. The very fact that the Leadership Untitled podcast is, you're extending trust to your expert, your guest. You're extending a trust to them to come up with this real time. It's a trust, and that inspires. So you're part of this. Let's bring about together a renaissance of trust and inspiration in our world.
We've had some wonderful titles as well. Because of that, some wonderful titles. Brilliant stuff. What I will do, Stephen, is I will put links to your social media channels that you've mentioned there. I'll put them in the show notes. Also, if you'd love to read more about look into Stephen's books more, I'll put links to those as well, so as people can go straight to buy them. Although what I would really encourage, if like me you get inspired just by listening to Stephen, then get yourself on Audible, listen to the audiobooks. They are fantastic on there. Absolutely fantastic. And fill in those little commuting gaps in your life rather than listening to the football on the radio. Actually learn something and make a plan for yourself. So I'll put all those in there. Thank you so much for today again, Stephen. Thank you for coming along and sharing these tips and insights to everyone. Love your work, and it's a pleasure and an honor to have had you on the show.
Thank you so much, Rob. It's been an honor for me to be on your show. I so appreciative. Thank you.
So that's it for this week's edition of the Leadership Untitled podcast. This edition is called The Future of Leadership, from command and control to trust and inspire. My thanks again go out to Stephen M.R. Covey for what has been a fantastic conversation and for agreeing to come along to the show in the first place. And of course, you guys out there for listening. Please, if you've not done so already, subscribe and like our podcast, and I'll see you soon. Bye now.